Is it safe to travel to Panama? That's the question we're diving into today. And I have to say, as someone who spent over 25 years working around the world in industrial safety and risk management, my radar is finely tuned for what can go wrong and how to prevent it. These days, I've shifted my focus toward helping everyday travelers navigate the often overlooked realities of travel safety, especially in destinations that don't always make the headlines but absolutely deserve your attention. And Panama is one of those places. Before we get into the specifics, let's start with the hook. Panama is a country of contrasts. You've got a gleaming, high-rise capital city that feels like a slice of Miami was dropped into Central America. Then, just a few hours away, you're in misty mountain towns like Boquete, where roosters crow and life unfolds at a slower pace. The Panama Canal might be the country's claim to fame, but dig a little deeper and you'll discover it's a destination full of biodiversity, indigenous cultures, colonial history, and a growing expat community. But does all that beauty come with a safety cost? Let's get into it. Now, if you've already looked up the travel advisories, you'll notice that Panama generally avoids the do not travel or reconsider travel categories from the major Western governments. According to the US State Department, Global Affairs Canada, the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs, Panama is considered to have a medium-level risk. Enough to be cautious, but not enough to sound the alarm. Still, like many destinations, the safety profile of Panama isn't a one-size-fits-all. Panama City is very different from Colón. Boquete is a world away from Darien. So let's talk about what matters most. First off, Panama City. This is the capital, the economic hub, and a city of stark contrasts. On one hand, you have upscale neighborhoods like Punta Paitilla, O Barrio, and the modern waterfront of Avenida Balboa. These are places where you'll find embassies, banks, high-end condos, and travelers snapping selfies in front of luxury yachts. On the other hand, Panama City is also home to neighborhoods with high levels of poverty, gang activity, and petty crime. Areas like El Chorrillo, Curundú, and parts of San Miguelito are not places where tourists should wander off track. Petty crime in Panama City is probably your most common concern. Think bag snatching, pickpocketing, and occasional scams targeted at tourists. These typically happen in crowded areas, markets, or on public transportation. Violent crime is less common in tourist zones, but it's still not unheard of, especially at night or in the more marginalized neighborhoods. Interestingly, many travelers report that they feel safer in Panama City than they do in some major North American cities, and that isn't entirely inaccurate. What matters is your awareness and behavior. Stick to well-lit areas. Don't flash your valuables. Use licensed taxis or rideshare services. And if you're walking alone, do it with purpose and not a smartphone glued to your hand. Now let's contrast that with the town of Boquete, up in the highlands. Boquete has a reputation for being a peaceful, expat-friendly community nestled in the mountains. It's cooler in climate, quieter in pace, and home to coffee farms, hiking trails, and a lot of retirees from Canada, the US, and Europe. It's often described as the Switzerland of Panama, and while that might be a stretch, it's definitely one of the safer spots in the country. Boquete does have crime, but it tends to be the kind of opportunistic theft that happens when someone leaves their laptop in a car overnight. Violent crime is rare. That said, Boquete has also seen increased attention in recent years from both travelers and investors, and with that comes a few growing pains: overdevelopment, land disputes, and the usual issues of gentrification that can affect social harmony. But overall, if safety is your priority, Boquete is a much lower risk area than some of the urban zones in Panama City. Now let's talk about water safety and food hygiene. In Panama City and most urban centers, tap water is considered safe to drink. That's a big win compared to many other countries in Central America. However, when you get into rural areas, or the outer islands like Bocas del Toro or the San Blas archipelago, bottled water is the way to go. Not because the locals drink anything different, but because the infrastructure in those areas may not meet Western filtration standards. As for food, Panama's culinary scene is largely safe and accessible. You'll find a mix of Afro-Caribbean, Latin, and even Asian influences. Street food can be delicious, but like anywhere, use your judgment. If the vendor is busy with a steady flow of locals, you're likely in good hands. If the grill looks questionable and the food's been sitting out for hours, it's not worth the gamble. Public transportation in Panama is another area worth addressing. The metro system in Panama City is modern, clean, and surprisingly safe. Buses known as Diablos Rojos, or Red Devils, have historically been less reliable and less regulated, although many of the older models have been phased out. Uber operates throughout the city and is a preferred choice for tourists because it removes the guesswork of fare negotiation. One thing that often catches travelers off guard is Panama's use of the US dollar. Technically, the country uses the Balboa, but in practice, US currency is accepted everywhere. Coins may be Panamanian, but bills are US dollars. That makes it easier for North American travelers, but you'll still want to bring smaller denominations. Change can be hard to come by in rural areas. Let's pivot for a moment to politics and social climate. Panama is relatively stable politically, especially compared to some of its neighbors. It has a functioning democracy, regular elections, and a strong international banking presence. However, political protests do occur, especially over issues like land rights, labor disputes, or corruption. These are rarely violent, but as with any mass gathering in a foreign country, it's best to avoid them. You don't want to get swept up in something you don't understand, especially if law enforcement is involved. Racial and social dynamics in Panama are layered. The country is a melting pot of cultures. Indigenous communities, Afro-Caribbean Panamanians, Spanish descendants, Chinese Panamanians, and newer expat arrivals. While most travelers report feeling welcomed, there are still instances where biases can appear, particularly outside the main tourist zones. Women travelers, especially solo female travelers, have occasionally reported catcalling or unwanted attention, especially in urban areas. LGBTQ+ travelers should also be aware that while Panama is more progressive than some Central American neighbors, same-sex marriage is not yet legal, and public displays of affection may attract attention in more conservative or rural communities. Now let's touch on one of the more controversial regions of Panama, the Darien Gap. This jungle-filled, roadless region on the border with Colombia is considered a no-go zone. It's a hotspot for drug trafficking, human smuggling, and violent crime. No matter how adventurous you are, this is not a place to explore. The travel advisories from all the major Western governments make that crystal clear. On the flip side, there are parts of Panama that offer world-class experiences with very little risk. The San Blas Islands, managed by the Gunayala people, offer untouched beauty and a deep cultural immersion. Bocas del Toro is a bit more backpacker-oriented and can have issues with drugs or party-related petty crime, but it's manageable with common sense and a low profile. And now, as promised, here's your surprise. Many travelers are shocked to learn that Panama has one of the highest rates of financial security in Latin America. That's right. Because of the canal and international banking laws, it's a hub for global finance and logistics. What that means for you as a traveler is this: major emergencies, medical, security, or consular, are more efficiently handled here than in many of its neighbors. Hospitals in Panama City are generally excellent, especially private ones, and you can access English-speaking doctors with little difficulty. It's a layer of reassurance that most people don't expect from a country that's still very much part of the developing world. So is it safe to travel to Panama? From a travel safety lens, the answer is a cautious yes. Yes, if you stay aware. Yes, if you plan ahead. And yes, if you respect the culture and geography of this unique country. Panama offers incredible rewards for travelers. But like anywhere, it requires your attention, not your fear. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel for more destination safety briefings. And don't forget to reach out to me directly or through True North Travel if you're planning a trip to Panama or anywhere else in Latin America. Whether it's helping you choose the right neighborhood to stay in or just talking you through the latest advisory update, we've got your back. Until then, see the world, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.